When your adult child chooses their spouse over you, heartbreaking reality, empty nest syndrome, and shifting family loyalties. The porch light. The porch light was always supposed to be left on. That was the unwritten rule of the Miller household for 26 years. Through scraped knees on the cracked driveway, through middle school bullies and high school heartbreaks that felt apocalyptic, through late-night drives home from college when the world pressed too heavily on young shoulders, that steady amber glow stood as a silent, unbreakable promise. No matter how far you go, you always have a place here. Tonight, Elena Miller stood motionless by the bay window, arms wrapped tightly around herself, staring into the suffocating quiet of their suburban Ohio neighborhood. The street was dark except for that one light. She realized with a crushing finality that brightness alone wasn't enough. No matter how fiercely it burned, the light could not guide home someone who no longer wanted to find his way. The silence inside the house had weight. It pressed against the walls, gathered in corners, and coated every surface like invisible dust. It settled over framed graduation photos where Julian's smile still looked carefree, over the faded growth chart marked on the kitchen door frame with pencil notches from age 2 to 18, and over the worn spot on the living room couch where he used to sprawl with controllers in hand. This was empty nest syndrome, but layered with something sharper and more devastating. The realization that she hadn't simply lost her son to adulthood. She had lost him to someone else. Part 1. The Shifting Tides. Arthur sat in his familiar plaid armchair, the fabric now threadbare from decades of use. His eyes stared at the same page of a paperback thriller for what must have been the 60th minute. The man who once filled every room with laughter and stories had aged 5 hard years in the past 6 months. The distinguished silver at his temples had turned brittle white. The spark in his eyes had dimmed to a resigned flicker. "He'll call Elena," he said quietly, though the words carried no conviction. "It's their first anniversary. They're probably just busy with life." "Busy," Elena repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. Too busy to return a text? Too busy to acknowledge the flowers we sent for their anniversary? Or is she making damn sure he stays locked inside the perimeter she's drawn around him? The she was Chloe. 3 years earlier, when Julian first brought Chloe home, Elena had embraced her completely. She spent days preparing, shopping for ingredients, cooking Julian's beloved beef bourguignon from scratch, polishing the silverware, and transforming the guest room with fresh linens, scented candles, and a carefully chosen welcome basket. She wanted Chloe to feel like the daughter they had longed for, but could never have after years of fertility struggles. At first, Chloe seemed ideal, ambitious, well-spoken, with a bright smile and quick wit. She laughed at Arthur's corny jokes and praised Elena's cooking. But in hindsight, the cracks were there, subtle and easy to dismiss in the glow of new love. The erosion of family loyalty didn't arrive with shouting or slammed doors. It crept in like slow water eroding stone, tiny withdrawals that compounded until the entire landscape shifted. It was the way Chloe's smile tightened when Elena offered her cherished family recipes. It was the way Julian's language changed. The word "we" no longer meant the Miller family. It became a boundary, a shield, a declaration of a new sovereign nation. "We don't really eat dairy anymore, Mom. We prefer to spend the holidays creating our own traditions this year. We think it's better if we handle our own medical decisions, Dad." Each "we" placed another brick. Chloe supplied the mortar. Julian built higher, until Elena and Arthur stood outside an impenetrable wall, peering through frosted glass at the sun they thought they knew. Elena often replayed memories like old film reels during sleepless nights. Julian at 7, running into her arms after winning a spelling bee, face flushed with pride. Julian at 14, practicing his driving in the empty parking lot while she white-knuckled the passenger seat and offered gentle encouragement. Julian at 22, calling her at midnight from college, homesick and overwhelmed just to hear her voice. Those versions of her son felt increasingly distant. Part 2. The Catalyst. The true breaking point came 6 months ago during Thanksgiving, a holiday that had been sacred ground in the Miller home for decades. Elena had planned for weeks. She ordered the special pumpkin pie from the bakery Julian loved as a child. She pulled out the hand turkey artwork he made in 2nd grade. New table linens were bought. The house would smell of sage, cinnamon, and home. Then came the phone call. Not from Julian, from Chloe. "Elena," Chloe began, her voice polished and authoritative. "Julian and I have decided to host Thanksgiving at our apartment this year. My parents are flying in from Boston. Since they're traveling so far, it makes the most sense for us to host." Elena's stomach dropped. She forced cheer into her reply. "Of course. We'd love to drive down. It's only 3 hours. I can bring Julian's favorite sweet potato casserole and—" "Actually," Chloe cut in smoothly, "our space is quite limited, and my mother is very particular about the menu. We think a small, intimate gathering would be less stressful for everyone. We can schedule a quick Zoom call on Friday instead." A Zoom call. For the child she had carried, nursed through endless ear infections, stayed up with during nightmares, and sacrificed so much for. That evening, Elena finally reached Julian. His voice was different, guarded, rehearsed. "Mom, you have to respect our boundaries," he said, the therapy language sounding foreign in his mouth. "Chloe works incredibly hard. Her parents don't see us often. Why does this have to become such a huge emotional crisis? You're making me feel guilty for living my own life." "Julian, this isn't guilt," Elena pleaded. tears flowing freely. "It's about family. We haven't seen you since July." "This is exactly what Chloe warned me about," he sighed. "Everything turns into a tragedy with you." "I need space, Mom, for the sake of my marriage." For the sake of my marriage. Those words became a knife that twisted for months. Julian had chosen. He had looked at the woman who knew his every fear, dream, and scar, and labeled her a threat to his future. Thanksgiving that year was devastating. Elena and Arthur sat at their beautifully set table for two. The food tasted like cardboard. The hand turkey centerpiece mocked them. Arthur tried jokes. Elena tried smiles. Both failed. That night, she cried in the shower so Arthur wouldn't hear. Part 3: The Tragedy of Silence. The following months were a masterclass in slow heartbreak. Elena became an expert at decoding text messages. Every question was landmine-laden. "How's work?" Received defensive replies. "Why? You think I'm failing?" A photo of their golden retriever, Max, got a thumbs-up emoji half a day later. She began listening to old voicemails at 2 a.m., Julian's teenage voice cracking as he told her about his first breakup, his proud tone when he got into his dream university, the warm, "Love you, Mom," that once came so easily. One night, after another cold reply, Elena collapsed at the kitchen table with an old photo album. Arthur found her there, shoulders shaking. "We raised him to be independent," he whispered, rubbing her back. "Maybe we did it too well. He loves his wife. That's what we wanted for him." "There's a difference between loving your wife and completely erasing your parents, Arthur," Elena snapped, anger cutting through grief. "He didn't just leave the nest, he torched it." And she lit the match. Elena started researching late at night. Online forums for mothers experiencing in-law alienation and adult-child cutoff were filled with stories mirroring hers. Some mothers hadn't seen grandchildren in years. Others described daughters-in-law who subtly rewrote family history, positioning themselves as the only valid source of love and support. She kept a private journal. "Today, I remembered Julian at 4, insisting his Superman cape was required uniform for preschool. He was so brave, so full of wonder. Where did that fearless little boy go?" The journal became her lifeline. Meanwhile, Arthur threw himself into yard work. The garden had never looked better, but it couldn't fill the void. They argued sometimes, not about Julian directly, but about how to move forward. Elena wanted to fight for their son. Arthur believed pushing harder would only push him further away. Part 4: The Unspoken Goodbye. A week after the ignored anniversary, the email arrived. Formal, cold, final. "Hi, Mom and Dad. I've accepted a major promotion at work. Chloe and I are relocating to Seattle in 2 weeks. We'll be swamped with packing and settling in, so please don't make a big production out of the move. We appreciate everything you've done for us. The psychological distance was becoming literal. Thousands of miles of mountains, plains, and silence. They drove down anyway. The apartment was organized chaos, boxes stacked like fortifications. Chloe played the perfect hostess, offering tea in disposable cups. Her politeness felt clinical. When Chloe stepped out to speak with movers, Julian's shoulders slumped. For a second, Elena saw her little boy again. "Julian," she whispered, touching his arm gently. "Are you truly happy?" He flinched and pulled away. His eyes darted toward the door. "I love my wife, Mom. I have to make this work. My life is with her now. You have to let me go." "I let you go to college. I let you go when you married," Elena said, voice breaking. "But you're not just letting go. You're throwing me away like yesterday's news." Chloe returned, assessing the scene instantly. She linked arms with Julian possessively. "We should wrap this up. The organizers will be here soon." Julian nodded, avoiding eye contact. "Thanks for coming." The drive home stretched for hours in heavy silence. Elena stared at passing fields, wondering how a mother's all-consuming love could become irrelevant. That night, Arthur turned on the porch light as always. Elena stared at it from the window. It no longer felt like hope. It felt like a lonely vigil. Part 5. Fractured Light. The first year in Seattle passed in a haze of grief and adaptation. Elena joined a support group for mothers in similar situations. Hearing stories from women across the country, some reconciled, many still waiting, gave her perspective, if not peace. She took up watercolor painting and volunteered at the animal shelter where Max had been adopted years ago. Arthur built a beautiful cedar bench in the backyard, placed under the old oak tree where Julian once built forts. They traveled more, a cruise, a trip to Italy. Moments of joy existed, but the ache lived underneath. One rainy afternoon, nearly 14 months after the move, Julian initiated a video call. Chloe wasn't visible. He looked exhausted but softer. "Hey, Mom, I've been thinking a lot lately. About last Thanksgiving, about Seattle. It's beautiful here, but sometimes it feels really far. I miss your cooking. I miss home." Elena's heart clenched. She wanted to pour out years of hurt. Instead, she chose gentleness. "The door is always open, sweetheart. The porch light stays on. Always." A long pause. Julian's eyes glistened. "I know, Mom. I'm sorry things got so complicated." It wasn't full reconciliation, but it was a beginning, a single brick removed from the wall. Part 6. The Long Road Back. Extended. Over the next 2 years, change came slowly and unevenly. Julian and Chloe had a daughter, Sophia. The first time Elena held her granddaughter, during a carefully arranged visit to Seattle, she felt a new love bloom. Not possessive, but deeply grateful. Sophia had Julian's eyes. There were setbacks. Chloe still controlled the narrative at times. Holidays remained tense, but Julian began calling more. He sent photos. He asked for Elena's advice on fatherhood. Small threads of connection were rewoven. Elena and Arthur visited Seattle twice a year. Each trip chipped away at the distance. One evening, sitting on the balcony overlooking the city, Julian turned to his mother. "I was scared, Mom. Scared that loving you meant I wasn't fully committed to Chloe. She needed to feel like she was my priority. I didn't know how to balance it. I messed up." Elena hugged him tightly, the way she had when he was small. "Love isn't a competition, Julian. There's room for all of us." Back home, the porch light continued burning every night. Elena often stepped outside after dark, looking up at the stars. She whispered the same prayer she'd said since the day Julian entered the world. "Come home when you're ready, my love. The light is still here." Some nights the wind carried the scent of blooming lilacs. Other nights it was cold and sharp. But the light remained, steady, patient, and enduring. The Miller household had changed forever. The nest was empty, yet somehow fuller with new understanding, new love, and the quiet wisdom that comes only from surviving heartbreak. The porch light still glowed, and somewhere, across the miles, a son was beginning to remember the way home. The end.